Good evening. If we could take our seats, we could get started. Maybe we'll get started without taking our seats. May I have your attention, please? Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for coming out this evening. My name is Bob Romero. As duly elected moderator, I will be the moderator or chair for the meeting according to RSA 197, Section 20. I hereby call the deliberative session of the town of New Ipswich to order. Earl Somero is the assistant moderator this evening. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Emergency exits are located through the back of the auditorium and then go to your left, even if you came in through the front door. For persons on the stage, the exits in the right rear and the back of the stage. Smoking is not permitted in any school building or on school property. Restrooms are down the hall, out of the back of the auditorium to the right. You may use either the faculty or the student restrooms. Please silence your phones unless you are expecting an important call. Thank you for closing the door. So first off, I'd like to start with introductions. I'd like to have everyone on the stage introduce themselves at this time.
David Lage, Selectman.
I'm sorry, I skipped an important step. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Want to continue with introduction?
John Beazer, Selectman.
Carlotta Peavy, Town Administrator.
Jessica Olson, Town Clerk, Tax Collector.
Jim Hicks, Budget Committee. Mark Fortier, Budget Committee.
Pat Medlider, Budget Committee.
And also serving on the Budget Committee were Jay Hopkins as a Select Person Representative and Alan Doyle. Supervisors of the checklist this evening are Ms. Barbara Graham, Mrs. Deb Harity, and Mrs. Becky Doyle, and they're seated in the rear of the auditorium. I want to thank and acknowledge the help and support of the police and fire departments, town boards, election officials, school officials, and the custodial staff here at the high school for their efforts, and also Mr. David Franz, the audiovisual specialist, for help here this evening. Now to the business at hand. Anyone living in New Ipswich who is a registered voter wishing to vote in today's session must check in with the supervisors of the checklist in the rear of the auditorium. Once checked in, each voter will wear a colored dot in order to vote today. There are no registrations allowed here today. However, you may register for the March 12th election with the town clerk prior to voting day or on the day of election at the polls. At the town meeting on or about 1997, the town of New Ipswich adopted SB2, which is the standardized official ballot referendum system. Today we will be discussing and voting items on the town warrant as directed by the SB2 system. The purpose of the warrant is to warn or place the subject matter before the voters. Senate Bill 2, by allowing us to make amendments to the warrant, enables a simpler but not exact range of possible amendments as voters enjoyed under the prior town meeting system. Today we will not be adopting any new articles. The town warrant, signed by the Select Board and the Budget Committee, may be placed on the official ballot for the final vote on March 12th with no further action required by this meeting. However, this being the first session of the town meeting, we will be explaining, discussing, debating, and possibly amending the warrant articles at the pleasure of the meeting. Voting on the official ballot takes place on Tuesday, March 12th, 2019, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. here at the Scenic Regional High School. If you're new to this, you enter from the rear of the gymnasium to go vote. This evening, we will be using general parliamentary rules to run this meeting, as has been done in prior years. Copies of these rules are posted on the walls of the auditorium, and I will run through them quickly now. Parliamentary decorum. The article will be read by myself, and then, if appropriate, I will recognize a board member to begin the discussion of the article. After persons on the stage have spoken, the floor will be open for discussion and questions. All speakers must be courteous and speak to the issues and not to the individual raising them. The moderator will not allow personal attacks or inappropriate language. If any person behaves in a disorderly manner and, after notice from the moderator, persists in such behavior, the moderator will request such person to be removed from the meeting per RSA 40, Section 8. Non-residents may speak only with the permission of the meeting, except the moderator will allow non-resident town officials and consultants or experts to speak who are at the meeting to provide information about an article or answer questions related to the town. The moderator may impose time limits as necessary to keep the meeting moving. Once a person has spoken on an issue, they should wait until all others have had a chance to speak, unless it is an answer to a question. The following are the parliamentary motions. Move the previous question, and this will end debate. This motion may be called to end debate after a reasonable time of discussion. A 2/3 majority is required to pass, and that would end debate. We would then proceed to vote on the motion on the floor or proceed to the next article. A no vote means the discussion may continue at the pleasure of the meeting. Request to vote by secret ballot. To vote by secret ballot, 5 voters must sign a written request prior to a voice vote being called. I will put some forms on the stage. This request can only be made for the article being considered. Motion to restrict reconsideration of an article. A motion to restrict reconsideration of an article is allowed on any and all prior articles. Once a motion to restrict reconsideration is adopted, the article can no longer be reconsidered by today's meeting. Motion to amend an article. At today's meeting, certain articles are open to amendment. If amendments are properly offered, they will be discussed and will be voted upon here today. If an amendment is adopted by this meeting, the article will appear as amended on the official ballot at the voting session on March 12, 2019, without another vote on the original article. If the amendment fails, the article will appear on the official ballot in its original form with no further action needed. Only one amendment may be presented at a time, and I also have some amendment forms if you need one. Point of order. This may be called at any time there is a question about parliamentary or general procedures. A request to move the question is not a point of order. Are there any questions? At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to adopt the rules of the meeting as just outlined. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. It's a vote in the affirmative, and I so declare. As a reminder, you must check in with the supervisor of the checklist to participate in today's meeting for votes. I would encourage all interested voters to speak. Microphones are set up at the front of the auditorium. Please line up in the microphone, and when acknowledged by the moderator, please state your name the first time you are speaking on each article, and as necessary, so the town clerk can properly record the proceedings. Please direct your discussion through the moderator and not to other voters. Non-residents are welcome to observe, but not allowed to vote. Are there any non-residents in the hall at this time? Would you please raise your hand? All right, thank you. The moderator would like to recognize Select Person David Lage at this time.
Before we start on the presentation that we have, there's some housekeeping clarifications that we have to address first. And that is on this year's budget, both the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen had met to meet with department heads and review the budgets and to come up with the budgets that are being presented this evening. By the New Hampshire law, we have 2 items that have to be put forth to the voters, which you have copies of, which are the actual warrant article and the default budget. Both of those have to be signed and posted, I think it was by January 28th. Unfortunately, I was away on vacation at that time, and the resignation of Selectman Hopkins had already been accepted. So we only had 1 selectman in town that could sign both of these. At that time, the decision was made because Selectman Hopkins was part of the board at the time that worked on the budgets. He did sign it. We questioned that with our legal counsel, and they had advised us just to address that this evening, and I'm going to sign both of these warrant articles so that we have the housekeeping squared away. So at this time, I'll sign, and then we'll start with the deliberative session.
Any discussion on that? Any questions? All right. So, Article 1, to choose the following necessary town officials for the year ensuing. Board of Selectmen, 1 for 1-year term. Board of Selectmen, 1 for a 3-year term. Board of Assessors, 1 for a 3-year term. Treasurer, 1 for a 3-year term. Trustee of the Trust Funds, 1 for a 3-year term. Trustee of the Trust Funds, 1 for a 2-year term. Planning Board, 2 persons for a 3-year term. Cemetery Trustees, 1 for a 3-year term. Cemetery Trustees, 1 for a 1-year term. Article 2 is about the police station, so I'm going to recognize David Lage for a presentation at this point.
First of all, before we start, I do want to thank both the Budget Committee, the department heads, our town administrator, and all the town departments that helped us put our budget together. As everybody knows, it's not a simple task, and to keep our budgets where they are and in line, it's a challenge at best. We'll be going through the proposed budgets, the revenue projections, comparable tax rates, and then the warrant articles. Article 2, which is a bond vote, we had held a public hearing on that because it requires a bond, and it was requiring a 3/5 vote in the affirmative in order for it to pass. I'll just read it quickly here. Shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $1,200,000 for the purchasing of real estate, preparing plans and specifications, permitting, site work, construction, and renovation of the police station, with $700,000 of such sum to be raised through the issuance of bonds or notes and in compliance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA Chapter 33, and to authorize the use of $500,000 of unreserved fund balance, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes, and determine the date, maturities, and interest rate, and other details of such bonds or notes, and to authorize the Selectmen to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, which may be available for said project, to comply with all laws applicable to said project, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,500 from taxation for bond issuance costs, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take any other action or to pass any other vote relative thereto. For those of you that have not been able to attend the open house that was at the police station or the public hearing, the proposal that has been vetted by the Police Department and the Board of Selectmen concurred with it, was to purchase the existing building where they are now. The current owner will be vacating their end of the building, as well with the adjacent tenant. So the police station will have the room to expand, and then the construction of a sally port and holding cell area would be constructed as part of this project. The reason why the board went forth with this proposal was last year's proposal that was presented as a warrant article was to demolish Building 2, which those of you that aren't familiar is the building behind the current town office and in front of the highway department, and to put the police station there. So that, excuse me, that cost would have involved the demolition, the new construction, and the reconfiguration of the entrance to the town hall office and police station to make it a safe entrance. At that time, the cost was just under $2 million. The voters voted that down. The concern of the select board is if someone purchases the current building and not the town, then our hands could be strapped if we have to find some place to relocate the police. Even we do have a term in the lease agreement that we have, I think it's 6 months or 1 year's notice, but with that, that would not give us sufficient time to make it work. So currently, this is the plan that we have to go before the voters. As I said earlier, this is a plan that the police department worked on to make sure that it met their needs for at least the next 20 years. If you look at the historical data of the way the town has grown, this should still work if we stay on that projection. Any questions?
Come forward, Mr. Coffey. Also, please hold the microphone close to your mouth when you speak. We had a lot of trouble on Saturday with people not being able to achieve that. Sorry.
It's on?
Yes.
I don't hear. Can you hear me?
Hold it out like a cigar there.
Okay. I have one question, and the question is either for or against the building. The question is, can you tell me the amount of available undesignated fund balance available as shown in your accounting system for December 31st, 2019, and how much of it is a receivable and how much is cash?
The 2018 books are barely closed, and we consulted with Stonehill, which is an accounting firm that we use, and we're advised not to rely on those numbers because the only thing that's been audited is the 2017 figures. And as of October, when the tax rate was set, the unreserved fund balance, if memory serves, was 1.2, 1.3 million. And after the 500,000 is used, there would be a balance of 800,000, give or take, which is above the minimum amount that DRA recommends a town retain for emergencies.
Follow up?
Sure.
The reason I asked the question is we're now, when we go to town meeting, going to be, what, 13, 14 months beyond the date of that little over $1 million. So that becomes an irrelevant figure. And the town's accounting system should be able to deliver an unaudited amount. It could have gone down, it could have gone up. All I'm asking is, do you know what it is? And I guess the answer is no. Thank you.
Well, Jim, I just want to clarify. I don't think the answer is no. We do know what that number is. We do know we are anticipating, based on the closeout of the books, we had approximately $123,000 to add to that figure. but that's unaudited.
That was my question then. And the other part is, how big a receivable do you have? In other words, how much of it's actual cash? Because your undesignated fund balance of over $1 million is not all cash.
Correct.
Marcia?
Exactly. I have just ruffled through the budget, but my question is, do we have in New Ipswich bonds that we're paying off? And if so, what are they and for how much?
The last bond to be paid off is the closing of the landfill, the cap. And when we go through the slide presentation, that's one of the line items in the budget. With the value, you'll see that even this year, I believe that dropped down a little bit because of where it is in the bond schedule. And I believe that one there is paid off in 2023, but I won't quote that. But it's very soon that it's paid off. That's the only one. Before we do get off of this, I will ask Chief Carpenter to come up and explain his view on the police station and as far as why we need it and the fit of this site for the police station. Chief Carpenter?
Good evening. First of all, thank you all for coming tonight. This is a very important issue involving the police department and where we are going to have a permanent home. As most everyone here is aware, we moved up to our current location back in 2008 as a temporary measure. Here we are 10 years later, and we're still in that same location. We originally moved from Building 2, which is located behind Town Office Building, which we occupied about 5,000 square feet, and moved up to this temporary space of 1,400 square feet. With all that being said, again, it was a temporary measure, and we have gotten to the point now where it worked as a stopgap. It no longer works. It wasn't efficient or effective at the time. And it just has gotten increasingly worse as time goes on. Multitude of areas of concern, booking and processing area. We have no holding cells. We currently handcuff subjects that we bring in that are in custody. We hook them to a bench, which is within 5 feet of where an officer does all his booking and processing of the individual. Another area of concern.
Chief, would you hold the microphone closer to your mouth, please? Thank you.
Another area of concern is also where you walk into the building is actually also our only way out of the building. You are walking into the lobby area where we're taking complaints at the desk that's located in the lobby. We deal with all sorts of complaints, people walking in, and we have people lined up waiting to talk to an officer while, in fact, he's dealing with someone, so there's information about a prior incident involving someone else that's being, heard by these other individuals. We have situations where we're dealing with domestic violence related issues, with restraining orders, stalking orders, things of that nature. We'll have a victim of a crime sitting there at the table while the defendant walks in, which is in clear violation of an order. The other space requirements aren't even close to being met. Every room that we have, instead of being dedicated to a space or a use, is a shared space and a shared use. It's just gotten to the point where it's not a workable situation. It's an officer safety issue, and it's also a citizen issue. It's an issue that needs to be addressed. We need to start looking at these issues sooner rather than later. And this is a proposal that I support. I do believe this proposal will last this town for many, many years to come. And that's about all I've got to say at this point. And I'll take any questions at this time.
Any questions? Please come forward to use the microphone.
Hello, I was wondering about the adjacent parcel of land. Is that part of the deal as well?
I didn't hear the question. Would you repeat it, Chief?
The question was whether or not the adjacent parcel of land is part of this deal. My understanding is, and Chairman, if you correct me if I'm wrong, this is a two-parcel project, or being sold as a two-parcel project. There is a 2-acre lot that is directly behind the current location of the police department. To my knowledge, there are absolutely no plans for that 2-acre lot. The only plan that you see is up there on the board, and if you look at the light blue to the darker blue shaded area to the right, that is all the existing building at this point in time. The only addition would be to the far left in the darker teal blue section would be the new addition, as well as a garage, cellar, board storage area combination. So we are using the exact existing footprint that is currently there. That 2-acre lot that is behind it is for whatever the selectmen or the town decide they want to use it for.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Bill May. I live on Page Hill with my wife, Jeannie. I retired from the Townsend Police Department in 2002. I did a 30-year career there, and I chaired the last 21 years as Chief of Police. I chaired the committee to build the police station in Townsend that's on Route 13. It's as nice today as the day it was built, and it still is functional. In 1987, Townsend sent me to Arizona to go to school for design and construction of police facilities. I know a little bit about the business. I know a little bit about the building. What is important here is the way this is laid out for safety purposes, not only for the general public, but for the people they bring in there under custody. Usually within the first 75% of an incident, I believe, is when police find themselves in combative situations. The other 23% is when they come through that front door right there. And the problem with what's there now is there's only one door. You need at least two, and you need that sally port, which is on your left, to bring people in there that are unruly. I fully support this measure, and I fully support what you're doing, and I just hope everyone else does. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this article?
If we move along here, we'll go through the budget proposal, and we've broken it down by the various departments within the town, showing you the 2018 budget, the 2019 proposed, and the percentage difference between the two. Most of them are pretty explanatory. You may see, for example, trustees of the trust funds, 12%, but when you look at a $1,200 budget, it's really not that big of a difference. But there are going to be some on here that we want to point out, just so you have a good understanding of where they are. The elections and registrations down 46%, primarily because we have fewer elections this year than what we had in 2018. The insurance, the cemeteries has gone up 107%. The cemetery trustees have come before the Board of Selectmen and are trying to get our cemeteries up to par. There are times where there, you know, we weren't providing enough mowings, there was storm damage that still needs to be cleaned up, monuments that needed to be repaired, fencing that needs to be installed, and the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee agreed with them. Some of the funding will come out of the trust funds that they have available. The insurances have gone up over 10% for our health and dental, which this is reflecting not only that, but we also have, I don't know if anyone recalls last year on the property liability insurance, we showed it almost half the price, and that was because last year's insurance, the billing was on a July to June billing. Well, the town's budget goes January to December, so we had a discussion with the insurance company that in 2018, our budget would be to get us through the end of December from July. And so now this year, we're back to a full annual budget for the price of the property liability insurance. Transfer station, that's up almost 26%. We put that out to bid this year. Last year, we received tremendous increase in the cost of disposal and trucking, and that's what this is reflecting. What this doesn't reflect, remember, this is what our budget is. You'll see and in the handout that we provided, the town doesn't only spend money, but we also bring in revenue. And the transfer station is a good example of that. The revenue, I think, this year was almost $60,000. So I don't think we'll ever reach a point where we'll be break even, but it's good to be able to put a dent in it. The landfill cap maintenance has gone down. Last year we had budgeted for another monitoring well that had been damaged, so this year we're back on track. And if anybody has a question as I'm going through these, I'm leaving them up just so you can see. Feel free to raise your hand and ask. Earlier, the question was asked what we had for bonds, and you'll see the last two lines on here are showing what our bond rates and what the interest is on that bond, and this was when we had to cap the landfill. And you'll see that the interest keeps going down as we pay it off. This here shows the revenues that the town has and what we had estimated in 2018 versus actual that have come in, and then what we're estimating for 2019. The land use change tax is when people take current use property out of current use. There's a penalty for that, and we brought that in. The yield tax is for timber that's removed for commercial. Excavation taxes for gravels. Delinquent taxes, motor vehicle permit fees have increased. The building permits have increased significantly. Being in a construction community, I think everybody's aware the way construction's been going since 2018. The other permits, licenses, and fees include the monies from the transfer station, the meals and rooms taxes, the money we receive from the state. The highway block grant is the money we will receive from the state, which is actually a warrant article. The state and federal line there, you'll see that in 2018 we have an estimate of $556,386 and an actual of $556,113. I want to explain that because when I first saw it, that one really caught me off guard. What that was last year when we voted for the replacement of the bridge on Taylor Road. and which falls under the state bridge aid program. It was a non-lapsing and it goes out because that bridge aid funding won't come until, I think we're scheduled somewhere around 2025. But because the voters approved it and raised and appropriated, and we're going to be receiving that from the state, we have to show it. So when you look at next year's only $75, that explains why. I'll stand corrected. Earlier I had said the transfer station money was included in a previous line item. That's in the line item under income from departments. The bottom line is if you look at our 2019 estimate, we're projecting somewhere around $3 million in revenue. One of the questions we always get asked is, well, how come my taxes are where they are, whatever the value may be? This chart here shows the communities that surround New Ipswich and those even fringing out from there. And you'll see the town tax rate in New Ipswich, which is $5.50. Now this is the town tax rate. That doesn't include state, county, or the school, but just the town, because that's what this budget is that we're presenting. And we're at $5.50. And if you notice on the chart, there's probably 3 towns, Ridge, Sharon, and Fitzwilliam, which are a little bit under us. So I think you're getting a good bang for your buck. Article 4 is the highway block grant. Because it's revenue that we receive from the state, we have to put it as a warrant article to accept that money. Oh, okay. Thank you. Selectman Beazes pointed out, are there any questions on Article 3, which is the budget? No questions?
Well, I'd like to read Article 3 if we can go past it at this point.
Yeah.
Article 3, shall the town raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein totaling $2,444,030. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $2,359,359, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40, Section 30, subsections 10 and 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 3-2. Are there any questions or discussion on the budget? All right. I'll go ahead and read Article 4. Road Projects Block Grant. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $150,000 for maintenance, construction, and reconstruction of New Ipswich roads to be offset by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation block grant. No amount to be raised through taxation. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 4-1.
Just to explain this a little bit, this is money that the state allows us or gives to us, and we have to vote on this every year. It's basically voting to accept the money. If we don't vote to accept it, we can't use it.
Any questions on Article 4?
address Ed Rogers.
Hold it closer, Ed.
Okay, this is revenue that comes entirely from the state. None of this comes from taxation, as is made clear here. And yet the Budget Committee did not recommend this unanimously. I'm wondering why. What's the reason for that?
Use the microphone. Speak louder. Tripod, sir.
One budget.
There was one budget committee member that voted all of them down.
Mr. Allen.
I'm sorry, Marcia.
Mr. Doyle voted all of the warrant articles down. Well, just all of the road articles.
And he hasn't signed here either.
That is correct.
That answer your question, Ed? Okay, thank you.
And as we're looking at this and progressing on to the next two, before Mr. Rommel reads them, just because we know it's going to come up, the roads that we are looking to for next year is to complete timber top. So part of that needs to be have the top coat put on, as well as to finish the end of it where they didn't go all the way to the four corners. Appleton Road, Ken and Gibbs Road, and then there's a section of Lower Ashby Road that when it was done years ago was not completed. It wasn't top coated, and that would be the, if we still have money left, we would go and finish off that section of Lower Ashby Road.
All right. Article 5, roads. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $350,000 to reconstruct and pave New Ipswich Road. This will be a non-lapsing appropriation for a period of 5 years, terminating on December 31st, 2023, or when the project is completed, whichever comes sooner, in accordance with RSA 32, Section 7, subsection 6. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 4-1. Are there any questions or discussion?
I would just like to add to this is I believe all of us have reaped the benefits of the improvement of the roads in town. At one point in time, you couldn't go down 2 or 3 roads without hitting potholes or other obstacles, let's say, and now you can almost make it all the way through town.
That's nice.
Article 6, also roads. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $250,000 to reconstruct and pave New Ipswich Road. This will be a non-lapsing appropriation for a period of 5 years, terminating on December 31st, 2023, or when the project is completed, whichever comes sooner, in accordance with RSA 32, Section 7, subsection 6. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 4-1. Any discussion on this article? Article 7, funding of capital reserves and expendable trusts. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $215,500 to be contributed to the previously established capital reserve and expendable trusts as follows. Highway Equipment Expendable Trust, $75,000. Fire Truck Capital Reserve, $50,000. Pool Expendable Trust, $6,000. Police Cruiser Expendable Trust, $20,000. Revaluation Capital Reserve, $15,000. Building Maintenance Expendable Trust, $35,000. Fire Department Protection Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, $12,000. Maintenance of Parks and Recreations Facilities Capital Reserve Fund, $2,500. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 5-0.
Meredith Long, Fire Chief.
I would like to amend that article to increase the fire department's contribution to the capital reserve account by $8,000. And I have it all written.
So which line was that?
This article to increase the fire department contribution from $12,000 to $20,000. So the firefighter protection equipment capital reserve account, which right now is allocated to have $12,000, I would like to increase to $20,000. And that would increase the total amount of the contributions to $223,500. That is signed. And my reason for doing that is we've contributed every year to this account for protective equipment for firefighters. The gear, which is boots, helmets, jackets, coats, gloves, things like that. I'm asking for the increase the same as I asked for it last year, was we need to starting to think about replacing our SCBA equipment. Right now we have 16 packs. They are 12 years old. The average lifespan on a pack is 15 years, and that is also the NFPA standard. Cost on an air pack today is $6,000, and I don't want to come to the taxpayers in 3 years and say I need 16 packs at $8,000 or $7,000 or whatever the increase will be at that point, at that time. I'd rather start planning ahead and start increasing so that we can slowly get enough money into that capital reserve account so that we have the money to pay for these. We'll also in the midterm be looking at grants as well to try and offset some of the money. But I'd like to start putting some of that ahead in advance just to be prepared. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Any further discussion on this article? Are you ready to vote on the amendment? All right. All those in favor of the amended value of $223,500?
Just to inform everyone, the current value on that fund is $24,851.69 prior to the deposit. So we just want to make sure everyone understands what's in there currently.
All right, let me read the article in completion. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $223,500 to be contributed to the previously established capital reserve and expendable trust funds as follows. Highway equipment expendable trust, $75,000. Fire truck capital reserve, $50,000. Pool expendable trust, $6,000. Police cruiser expendable trust, $20,000. Revaluation capital reserve, $15,000. Building maintenance expendable trust, $35,000. Fire department protection equipment capital reserve fund, $20,000. Maintenance of parks and recreation facilities capital reserve fund, $2,500. The recommendations no longer apply. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. It's a vote in the affirmative, and I so declare. Any further discussion on the amended article? Article 8. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $84,971 for contracted, licensed ambulance service, emergency services, and support. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 5-0. Is there any discussion on this article? Article 9, Library. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $40,000 to support the New Ipswich Library. Not recommended by the Board of Selectmen 2-1. Not recommended by the Budget Committee 5-0. Is there any discussion on this article? I'm sorry?
The reason why the board had voted against it was a few years back, their budget was $30,000. I recall encouraging them to increase it, and which they did to the $35,000. and then this year they've come in to ask for 40,000. And we thought that maybe doing, or the board at the time discussed maybe going to a happy medium at 37,000 or so, but they wanted to go forth with this warrant article. And it's a warrant article, so that's what gets put forth.
I can't speak to Selectman Hopkins at the time. I cannot remember what his objection was. The piece I had the objection to was the library asked us last year for $30,000 or $35,000, which was voted on by the town. The library then raised money in excess of what they needed for their operating budget. If any other department in town does not use their operating budget, it goes back into the general fund, either for the unreserved fund balance or to take care of a department that may have had an emergency and went over budget, for example, salt for the roads. The library does not return their money, but they have their own fund, their own trust fund. So that was my point in voting it down, was when we asked for some, back and forth, some negotiation, it wasn't there. And so I felt that, to ask the town to put in the full budget when they were raising in excess of their budget, that was my reason for voting it down.
I'm Barbara Graham. I'm one of the trustees of the library. I'd like to point out that our budget is about $60,000. We usually get about 2/3 of it from the town. Part of it is what we call the dividends from our trust fund, which we don't like to spend more than. This is an all or nothing thing. Either we get $40,000 we're asking for, or we get nothing. And if we get nothing, then we have to decide what to do, but the library could not continue as it has so far. I think it provides a lot of information to people. We have books, of course. We have a lot of programs. The Children's Story Hour is very popular, and we have passes for museums in the area, and goes on what we do. And I think that most of you probably got a request for funding from the library in the mail this year, and we'd like to thank the folks who contributed. We do have contributors, we do have other sources of funds which we use. We're also looking at this year probably about a $20,000 paint job for the library, which is going to come out of our endowment funds and a lot of other things. We don't know if the furnace will make it through the year or not, but we'd like to be prepared if it's not. And we'd like to ask again for support from the town. Thank you.
Ma'am, I expressly said to I believe it was the library treasurer that came to us that you realize that if you stay with the $40,000, you stand the chance of all or nothing. And she said yes, and we want to stay there. The biggest problem the budget committee had with this was we were completely cut. We were told that the operating costs of the library were completely covered by the town donation and donations raised. That's what we were told at the meeting. The meeting is online. And we felt that that's not fair to the town. You have a large endowment to operate the library, and you should use it.
An endowment is a trust fund. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. An endowment generally, a trust fund, is not meant to be spent down and completely depleted. What we're trying to do is maintain from our increases, dividends, whatever, for a year. We spend that. We're also looking at, we're in a very small building. It's really too small to operate our library. The parking is terrible, and we're looking long term. What can we do about this so we don't want to deplete our trust fund if indeed we're going to need a large sum of money down the road, which we probably will.
I don't have the figures in front of me at this extent, but last year you didn't even spend the interest on your trust fund.
We were lucky then.
Just, so, I mean, that was the point, is we looked at this,
Yes.
and the interest on the trust fund wasn't even spent.
That may be true one year, and the next year we'll wind up doubling what we spent. Our expenses with an old building, you never can predict.
Mr. Coffey.
Thank you. I would like to address a comment that was made by the selectmen about departments returning money that's unexpended. If you have a town library, they have library trustees, they have a tremendous amount of power. They typically have a treasurer, and they typically retain all the money in the appropriation that's unexpended. That is very normal. That is different than most town departments, and that's how it works. I think it's wrong to have something on the ballot that isn't recommended by the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen, even if you cut what they brought in. They could then bring a petition on it if they wanted to make up the difference. But I don't think it's a good idea to have all or nothing for the library. So I think we should support the library.
Any further discussion? Any ideas? All right, we'll move to Article 10. I'm sorry, Marcia? Yes. That warrant article can be amended, yes.
You guys all agreed to 3075?
Could you say that again, Marcia?
It was 37,000. 3070.
Hey, Mark, you look really busy. You look busy.
Attention, please. Back to order, please. All right. Do you want to speak, or do you want me to read the amended article? All right. I have an amended article for Article 9 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $37,500 to support the New Ipswich Library. Proposed by Marcia Ober and seconded by Gretchen Ray. Discussion on the amendment.
Michelle Pelletier, the treasurer of the library. I guess my question is, if we amend it to 37.5, would we then have the recommendation of the budget committee and the board of selectmen?
I can't answer the select, yes.
It's still going to be an all or nothing article though, so it's still going to be entirely up to the voters.
David, do you want to say anything?
So it would reflect the 2-0 in favor from the board and the budget committee wants to change their.
If you amend it back to 37.5, I would support it.
Point of information.
Yes?
Do the recommendations
Your name?
actually stay on a motion? I'm sorry, D. Daly. Do the recommendations actually stay on the motions if they're amended?
No.
Correct. I would think they would totally go away, so
Well,
there would be nothing on the ballot.
Or they could be replaced. They could be replaced by, provided they hold meetings, they could replace those numbers. They could replace their vote. So as David said, there's only 2 selectmen at this time, so their number will go to 2-0.
So the prior motion that was amended today already
Yeah?
would actually, both groups could go back and write new recommendations to go on the ballot.
They could.
We wouldn't be going back to write them, we would be doing them at this meeting. Currently.
I just don't recall that formal process being done in the past. I would think the recommendation should go away because it's an entirely new motion.
It is, but I'm sure we have the ability to say here at this meeting whether we do or don't recommend the amendment or the warrant as a whole. We're being asked, I'm sure we can say here, and if it becomes an issue, we can call and find out.
The recommendations are informational. They are not part of the warrant.
So they shouldn't be part of the ballot.
They're part of the ballot, but they're not part of the warrant article. They're an informational part. So, any further discussion on the amended article? You want me to read the article again, or are we okay? Yes?
I'm sorry to be slow responding. I don't see it the way you just said. I'm sure you're leaving. I'm Tim Jones. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
If I had to attend this meeting
Hold it closer, please.
and I came in and saw that everybody was against this thing at 37.5, when I heard you say that's what it's going to read, it's going to 37.5, but the both boards are against it still?
No.
No, that's not correct. What we're
So
saying
that
is
goes away, and a new recommendation gets added.
What will be the vote on the warrant? If I didn't come here and I come to the vote, on the regular voting, what's it going to read in the bottom there? It's going to be 5-1 against, or what is it?
No,
What's it going to say?
there's only 2 select persons at this time.
Right.
So that'll be 2-0 if I understood the gentleman properly. And the budget committee, I didn't hear what you said.
We haven't made our decision yet. We're listening.
Well, that's my question. If somebody comes and hasn't been listening to this deliberation, if it stays the way it reads now, nobody would vote for it.
It is not,
I don't know.
it can't stay the way it is now because it's a new number.
I understand that part, but I'm unclear what it will become.
Well, I think it's not clear from the budget committee perspective. The selectmen are 2-0 in favor.
D. Daly again. If that's the case, then I recommend that we get those we recommend that we get that number so that we can amend the motion to appropriately reflect what the new numbers will be. In other words, we should not be voting on this. If we think this is going to change the perception of the voters, then we should know what it's going to say before we vote on it. If this is still going to say not recommended by the Board of Selectmen 2-1, not recommended by the Budget Committee, we should know the exact numbers up front before this, because this is what's going to go to the public. So either we fix what's going to go to the public, or it shouldn't go, there should be no recommendation to the public.
So it's informational and it can be added after this meeting if the vote takes place by the Budget Committee at a different time.
This is a published warrant article. It is going to influence, and that there could be no change. If it's informational, you could be telling me it's not going to change at all. And that would significantly impact the voters, and we would have done potentially an amendment for no
It is
cost.
going to change if the amendment is adopted. Those recommendations, I don't know if we're on that article right now, those recommendations would not apply to a new amount.
But the recommendations are listed on the warrant, so I would tend to agree with her that the only time that we can make changes to that warrant is at this hearing. So the selectmen have made that decision as far as our votes. I would advise the Budget Committee, if they could, to either stand with what they have or make their change, so that when the vote on the amendment is made, the actual recommendations are reflected.
I'm not sure if this is right, Bob, so correct me. I'd like to make a motion, or... Can't?
No, we have a motion on the floor right now.
Okay, so... I'd like to...
Not according to our rules of the meeting, we can't.
So I would just say, let's vote on the amendment without the recommendation. The recommendations go away. And if the amendment passes, your vote, then it will be posted on the warrant as that, with no recommendations from either board.
Well, I just want to clarify, first of all, you're going to lose one vote on both Selectmen and Budget Committee immediately, because Selectman Hopkins is no longer in office. So that would make the Budget Committee a 4-person committee.
I'm counting 3.
He's still on, whether he's here or not. You cannot change his vote. So you will lose, so it'll be a 4-person committee on the Budget Committee and a 2-person committee for the Selectmen. So I just want to make that clear, and then you can't change the vote of the one member of the Budget Committee who is not present. So you're going to have one against.
This is an amendment. You can't vote on the amendment because it's not in office for a year.
That's correct. You can't vote on neither of the people who are here. That's correct.
Mr. Moderator, point of clarification. If the Budget Committee were to vote here tonight, with the 4th member not being here, it would still be legit, because they have a quorum, and if the member's not here, it would have been the same situation had the member not attended the meeting where the initial decision was made. So I would advocate that if we're going to make the amendment to the dollar value, which then changes the recommendations of either or both the Select Board and the Budget Committee, that should be reflected, because not having a recommendation on a warrant article that has a value to it is not acceptable to me.
Do you need a recess or?
No. Question for order. Are we going to find out whether this new article passes and then we'll make a recommendation? Or we'll make a recommendation before the article's actually voted? Doesn't seem right to vote on it, to make a recommendation unless it's voted on. I'm struggling.
Well, I understand your point. You don't know whether it's an official amendment until we vote on it. All right, so how about we vote on the article, then we amend the article so that it has the Select Board and the Budget Committee's recommendations amended to it, and vote on that.
Fine.
All right? Any further discussion on the main article as amended? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All right, that's a vote in the affirmative, and I so declare. Shall we amend, or shall we get a vote now? Select Board? 2-0. Budget Committee?
3-0.
I would like to have somebody put forward that any two people to sign this amendment is amended again.
You had said it would be 2-0, but it says not recommended, so you have to change it to recommended.
That's what the wording says.
Sounds good. Nice job.
Article 9, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $37,500 to support the new Ipswich Library. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 2-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 3-0. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. It's a vote in the affirmative, and I so declare. Any further discussion on the library as amended? We're almost halfway there. Article 10, revaluation. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $51,000 for the purpose of an update of assessed values as required by the State of New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration, and to authorize the withdrawal of $51,000 from the Revaluation Capital Reserve Fund established for that purpose. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 3-2.
That's incorrect.
The slide is incorrect. It's recommended by the Budget Committee, 5-0.
Okay. Do we need to do an amendment on that, or is that just a...
That's just a typo.
That's a typo. Okay. So recommended by the Budget Committee, 5-0. Any discussion on that article? Article 11, selectmen as agents to expend from Pool Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to name the selectmen as agents to expend from the Capital Reserve Fund entitled Maintain and Replace the Recreation Department Pool. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 2-1.
The reason this article is on is currently that is not marked as as expendable. So if something were to happen to the pool, we would have to wait for a town meeting in order to be able to fix any major issue for the pool that wasn't already in the budget. So say in the middle of the summer or 2 weeks before the summer, they go to start it up and the whole pump goes and we need to spend money, we can't do that. So it is the ability for us as selectmen or the select board at whichever time to use that account for the maintenance and repair of the town pool.
Any discussion, any questions? Article 12, selectmen as agents to expend from fire protection. To see if the town will vote to name the selectmen as agents to expend from the Capital Reserve Fund entitled Fire Department Protection Equipment. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 3-0.
Chief Lund, I'm asking just basically the same thing that Selectman Visa is asking. We have a firefighter that was certified in August and completed all of his training and was fully certified by the state of New Hampshire. Because I can't get him certified gear until after the town vote in March, I can't utilize him as a full-time firefighter. So I'm asking for your support on this so that we can get people new gear when they need it, replace it if it's worn out, things like that. We don't have to wait for a vote of the taxpayers in March. Thank you so much.
Any questions? Any discussion? Article 13, turnout gear. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $8,000 for the purpose of purchasing a minimum of 4 sets of turnout gear for the fire department, and to authorize the withdrawal of $8,000 from the Fire Department Protection Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, established for this purpose. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 5-0. Is there any discussion on this item? Article 14. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $9,550 for the purpose of funding the following regional health services that assist New Ipswich residents. Milford Regional Counseling, $500. Monadnock Center for Violence Prevention, $250. Meals on Wheels, $1,500. Court-appointed special advocates for children, also known as CASA, $250. 100 Nights of Shelter, $500. St. Vincent de Paul, $3,000. The River Center, $500. Granite State Children's Alliance, $250. Kentucket Valley Transportation Company, $500. Monadnock Family Services, $500. Home Healthcare Hospice and Community Services, $1,500. American Red Cross, $300. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-1. Is there any discussion on this article? Gretchen.
I'd just like to ask who determines which agencies and for what amount that the voters will be asked for.
We receive requests from agencies by mail. Some we don't, but we know what the need is for different departments based on what we've done previously or through education that we've gone and spoken to them. Most of those companies also send us in their letters, they tell us how many people from New Ipswich they service and for how much time, and they always tell us how much they want, and then we decide what we can or what we recommend. We also try to not repeat the same service over and over and over again. If one is a counseling service that's fairly local compared to a counseling service that's in Concord, we're going to try to fund the counseling service that's closer to us because we feel that would be most beneficial to the taxpayers and those within New Ipswich that need the service.
Yes, sir.
Just curious, what is St. Vincent?
Microphone, please.
Rick Nantel. I'm just curious, out of all of them, St. Vincent de Paul, what is it?
St. Vincent de Paul is a local food pantry that services, they service New Ipswich, Greenville, and I think they go beyond that, but they're run out of the Catholic Church in Greenville. And just for example, at Thanksgiving time alone, they give out well over 100 baskets to community members throughout the towns. They're very beneficial specifically to the town of New Ipswich and those people that what we call are food endangered at this time. It's one of the ones that we actually try to support as much as we can because they are very local and they are hugely beneficial to the people of New Ipswich.
Any additional questions? Article 15, change purpose of 250th celebration expendable trust fund. To see if the town will vote to change the name and purpose of the expendable trust fund for anticipated expenses for the 250th celebration to the Town Enhancement Expendable Trust Fund, and further, to name the selectmen as agents to expend. 2/3 vote required. Any questions?
Just a quick explanation on that. Back many years ago, when there was a fund set up for the 250th celebration, there was money left over, and it's sitting there in a trust fund, and we can't go back and spend money, so we're trying to give it a good purpose going forward, and that's why we called it the Town Enhancement Expendable Trust Fund.
How much is in the fund?
Marcia's question is how much is in the fund? All right.
It's like 25 bucks.
$6,583.48.
Any further discussion? Article 16, Budget Advisory Committee. Oops.
I just wanted to know if when that money is expended, if that expendable trust will go away, or will we continue to contribute to it every year after now?
If I understood that question, it's taking the monies from that trust fund, creating a new one.
Correct. And my question would be, will we next year then start adding again to that expendable trust under the new name, or will that money eventually go away and that expendable trust will go away?
My vision right now is that money's just going to sit there until something comes up that the voters can say, hey, let's use it for that.
Any additional questions? Article 16, Budget Advisory Committee. To see if the town will vote to form a Budget Advisory Committee pursuant to RSA 32, Section 24. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 3-0.
Again, just a clarification, the Budget Advisory Committee is what we used to have before we became a budget committee. So the Budget Advisory Committee is appointed and sits in the meetings and is able to ask questions of the department heads and the selectmen, and it gives another level of transparency so that people have an opportunity to know what's going on. So if as this comes around, if this gets voted in the affirmative and you're interested, we ask that you put your names forward and sit. It's a great way for us to keep checks and balances in place and know what's going on.
Any questions? Any discussion? All right. Article 17, Household Hazardous Waste. Shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $4,500 to participate in the City of Keens Household Hazardous Waste Program? Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 5-0. Any discussion on this article? Article 18, Total Service Connected Disability Tax Credit. By petition, shall the town vote to increase the amount of the previously adopted optional tax credit for total service-connected disability from the present $2,000 to $4,000 as authorized by RSA 72, Section 35. Not recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 2-1. Is the petitioner here present? Any comment from the Selectmen?
Just for a bit of information here, because Carlotta had looked into what the impact of this would be on the town, and currently with the $2,000 credit that's provided, it's that value is roughly $98,000. So we would be taking another $98,000 out of our tax base on this petition.
Any discussion? Article 19, increase optional veterans tax credit. By petition, shall the town vote to increase the amount of previously adopted optional veterans tax credit from the present $500 to $750 as authorized by RSA 72, Section 28. Not recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 2-1. David, do you have any similar?
I thought I had the numbers here, and I don't want to make a mistake and say something publicly, so I'm going to forego that. But this one here did have not as a significant impact as Article 18, but this had more recipients of it, so it's getting increased another third.
Ron, can you come to the microphone?
Yeah, I'd just like to say on the Article 18, there's only 13 disabled veterans in town.
Thank you. Any more comments on Article 19? Article 20, optional tax credit for combat service personnel. By petition, shall the town vote to adopt the provisions of RSA 72, Section 28-C, which provides an optional tax credit for combat service personnel serving in a designated combat zone as a member of the New Hampshire National Guard or a member of the United States Armed Forces called to active duty. This credit is in lieu of the optional veterans tax credit. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 3-0.
On this one here, I'd like to know if the petitioners are here, because the way this is currently written is not correct, and now would be the time to make the amendment, because by the RSA, there is no value in here on what that credit would be. And would
It's
for the copy of the RSA, but I believe they gave us
It's $500.
a range of what it could be. But I think before a vote is made on this, it should be amended.
Mr. Coffey?
I'm Jim Coffey. I'm a member of the Board of Assessors. I am not a signed petitioner, but I am familiar with the article. This article refers you back to the optional veterans tax credit, and it becomes whatever that is. I believe that was the intent of the legislation. This is what's new. What happened in the last legislative session is the limits were raised, the allowable limits were raised by the state of New Hampshire, the Senate, the governor, all them folks. What this does is this takes a person who's not yet a veteran and gives them the optional veterans tax credit only for when they're in a year that they're serving active duty in a war zone. So this refers back to our optional. If our optional veterans tax credit is $500, they get $500. $750, they get $750. So I think this can stand by itself.
Agree with that.
Any further discussion? I see we have fast research going on. While we wait for the research, is there any other business to be brought before the meeting? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, you like a motion to adjourn? I'm not entertaining that motion right now, thank you.
20?
Is there any other things to be brought before the town?
20 is $500. That's the National Guard. You take anyone overseas that's done by every year, you see $500.
I'll tell you, we're gonna bring figures.
When they get started coming to the they become a veteran, they get some $50 passes. No, they only get $500
We're waiting for the selectmen to satisfy their curiosity on RSA 72.
My understanding when I read this RSA 7228C, it gave you the outline of how, if you're going to go forth with this petition, what needed to be in there. And the criteria included a figure of the cost. It didn't. What it did say about the optional credits was that they're not a combined credit, and that's why I'm just trying to look up that actual RSA.
D. Daly, New Ipswich, living with someone who has followed this in the state legislature. The goal here, if I'm not mistaken, was to cover a small window of people who were not technically covered by the optional veterans tax credit. And I may be speaking slightly out of school, but there's a certain number of years that weren't covered. And Jim, that may spur your memory. And so this was meant to allow a slightly broader group of people who many feel were disenfranchised by the rules to be able to qualify for that.
This actually covers people active.
Correct.
Right. What I'm saying is this is active. The other one, you have to be a veteran already. You have to already be out. This one covers National Guards serving in combat.
That's right.
That's both National Guard and U.S. Armed Forces, that's correct.
That's right.
I think as a point of clarity, the intent is that the tax credit was supposed to match the current tax credit, that this just be amended to have that verbiage in there, because as I had read it, if I'm confused, I would think many other people would be. So at least to make it clear what that tax credit value is going to be would be the best way to approach this.
So David, is that the optional veterans tax credit, which we don't know what the value is? Because it could be voted on and changed?
On Article 20, the tax credit is in lieu of the optional veterans tax credit. In other words, this is saying that a veteran couldn't collect both. They could only collect one. If I understand Jim correctly, he's saying that this is the tax credit for, if this warrant article passes, should be the same value as the optional veterans tax credit.
It has to be. It has to be the same. The idea behind this is that unless we have $500 today, so let's say this passes. This is $500. Then we move the other one to $600 or $700. This goes with it. This has to equal that.
So could we have the amendment that say this tax credit is in lieu of and equal to the amount of the optional veterans tax credit? I'm asking the petitioners.
Well, I didn't sign the petition, but I wrote the article. I wrote the article in concert with the DRA.
Because I don't want to put a dollar figure on this, say 500, and then if one goes up, then you've got to petition all of them.
Either that.
You could say is in lieu of and equal to the amount of the optional veterans tax credit.
Or if if you don't want to amend it, put an explanation at the bottom that says the same thing. Just use the word explanation, and then put down, this is always equal to the optional radical tax credit.
The board will make an amendment then to this warrant article for the voters to vote on. Yes, please.
It's 500. Just Article 18. Okay.
Article 20 is amended. This is still by petition. Shall the town vote to and adopt the provision of RSA 72, Section 28-C, which provides an optional tax credit for combat service personnel serving in a designated combat zone as a member of the New Hampshire National Guard or a member of the United States Armed Forces called to active duty. This tax credit is in lieu of and equal to the amount of the optional veterans tax credit. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 2-0. Is there any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. That's a vote in the affirmative, and I so declare. Any further discussion on Article 20? Any further discussion this evening?
Let's make a motion to adjourn.
I will accept the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Coffey?
Thank you all for coming.
So move, all in favor, say aye.